The Heart of It.
Roy West kicking in towards the centre.
A distinctly Tasmanian conversation.
I can feel what it will be like when Tassie plays his first game, and I just...
Lynch gathers, he's got loose men everywhere, but he decides to have a pop shot, and it's an absolute ripper! 200 goals for Peter Hudson. What a fantastic effort.
How did he do that? Bear kick finishes off in style.
Up towards half forward, Stewart flying over the top. Oh, pulled in a beautiful mark.
Well done from Scott. After all, Shredder's got the first goal. Has it done?
Nichols has had the big ruckman, but oh! Crosswell!
G'day, it's Alistair Nicholson. My guest today on The Heart of It, one of football's great characters. Quirky and unconventional, fiercely competitive. A premiership player with Collingwood and key member of the Tasmanian team that beat Victoria in 1990. James Manson loved footy but dreamed of being a rock star. And during his playing days, which included 167 games with Collingwood and Fitzroy, he was able to indulge both passions. In this episode, James discusses his controversial mid-season move from North Hobart to Collingwood, his regrets over his volatile on-field behaviour, his music and moments of immense pride, including the 1990 AFL Premiership and Tasmanian win over Victoria. This is the James Manson story.
Inside 40, Manson, great mark. A beautiful win there by James Manson.
Let's chat a little bit about where you grew up in Tassie and your father, Jim, well-known legend of Tasmanian football, Glenorchy, member of the Tassie Footy Hall of Fame. What was it like being a youngster for you growing up in southern Tassie?
In southern Tassie, well, you mentioned my dad. The first thing that people would say about my dad, even when I was a little tacker growing up, was what a shocking kick he was.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, James. No.
So I definitely inherited his kicking style. But yeah, no, I grew up in Moona, went to a primary school, St Teresa's, ended up playing for Glenorchy when I was 12 years old. So I was fanatical Collingwood, fanatical. Used to, blow up my black and white balloons and have streamers on. I remember 77 was probably the darkest day of my life. So it was a real thrill to go and play for the Glenorchy Little League and wear the black and white jumper, and the same one that my dad obviously wore as well.
Yeah.
So, but I just remember some great footy people then, like some of my coaches. I had a guy, Alan Smith, who coached me at Dominic College, and just some great memories.
Yeah. Did you play senior footy at Glenorchy at all?
Not at Glenorchy, played for North Hobart.
Yeah. And there's an interesting story that we'll get to around that. So football was your main go. What else were you up to as a youngster? What were the typical things a young James Manson was getting up to in Moona when he had a bit of spare time?
I was fanatical guitar player and painter, artist. I ended up going to the Tasmanian School of Art, painting and doing photography. But guitar-wise, I always had my bands. I played my first professional gig at the Four Seasons Motor Inn in the city, or in North Hobart, I think it was.
How old would you have been then?
13. So, did a lot of gigs at the Red Lion and all that thing.
So you're this little teenager in these licensed establishments. What sort of music were you playing?
It was, your normal kind of top 40 fare, but back in those days, Midnight Oil and Aussie Crawl and all that kind of thing.
And were there members of the band? What were the names of the bands you were in, and were there other members older than you, or was it a bunch of your friends?
Gee, the first real band I was in was called One Night Stand. And actually the bass player in that band, Rob Meister, went on to bigger and better things. So I think he's based in Miami now in a recording studio there, and has played with a lot of pretty famous people.
Wow.
So, it was a big deal in my life.
Yeah. Where did your interest in music and also art come from?
I think I had some pretty amazing teachers, but my dad was a great singer. So he won a lot of the Stedfords in Hobart. He could sing a little bit like Caruso, I guess, maybe a poor man's Caruso, but he could really sing. So I'd say it came from Dad.
Yeah, okay. So at that time, if you had the choice of being a rock star or a VFL, AFL footballer, what would you have chosen, do you reckon?
Definitely a rock star, without a doubt. But I got to live that dream out in Melbourne when I came to Melbourne. So, within the first year, I put a band together, and we actually were pretty good.
Who was in the band? Did you have any other footballers on the scene?
Yeah, there was a guy, Glenn McLean, who was famous. There was a $300,000 court case. He was contracted to Melbourne, but Collingwood brought him over, and it was on the front page of the paper every day for probably 2 months. And he ended up playing, I think, one game for Collingwood. He was a ruckman, and then the young kid that came over from Tassie took his spot. So, but we were a great little original band. We ended up recording a vinyl up at Paradise Studios in Sydney, which is where like Cold Chisel recorded East. And I remember our engineer producer was a guy by the name of Peter Cobbin, who now is the head engineer at Abbey Road Studios. So. But we used to do I had a residency at the Corner Hotel for a couple of years, every Tuesday night I think it was, but we supported all the big bands. I remember supporting Diesel in his first ever Melbourne gig at the Corner Hotel, Mondo Rock and those kind of bands. So we were playing in front of, big crowds. So.
That's awesome. So you're juggling your footy commitments, you're training during the week, and then on Tuesday you're playing these gigs.
Yeah, I think it's a testimony to what an incredible coach Lee Matthews is. He used to always call music my job, and he respected what I did. I know his 2 daughters saw me at a gig at the Mentone Hotel once, and I think they must have said to Dad, they're not bad, Dad. I always remember that he had the whiteboard up and we were planning a pre-season training camp up at some army barracks in Bacchus Marsh, some big training camp, and halfway through the planning of it, he turned around and goes, "Jimmy, you got any gigs on?" And I've gone, "Oh, well, yeah, Lee, we were booked in on Saturday night down at Phillip Island." He's going, "Okay, well, do the gig, but make sure you get back by 6 a.m. Sunday morning, look after yourself." So he actually let me leave pre-season training camps to go and do gigs.
Wow.
Now, I played as much for Lee Matthews as Collingwood because of things like that, because he validated what I was doing outside of footy.
Yep.
And it's a real thing. I think Lee was big on, it's not a professional sport yet. You've got your job, and your job is very important. I know it would be different now because it's such a professional game, but that really made a difference. I guess just the fact that he validated what I did, and it was seen as very much different.
Yeah.
I wasn't a plumber. I was playing music and, coming to training. I went to RMIT and studied art. So I'd walk in a Vic Park with a big black folio, and I'll always remember Darren Mullane opening it up, and I'd spent the whole day doing life drawing. So he was just enamoured with like, "You get to do this every day."
What was Darren doing for a crust in those days?
Gee, I've got no idea. I've got no idea. But yeah, I do remember that.
What an amazing time. If I was to play people listening to this podcast, James, one song from that era back in the day, what would you recommend?
Oh, we had a single called The Rain, and MBF Health Insurance picked that up. So they ended up making an ad with our band. So they had the full-on like film crew, and they shot it on 35mm, the whole deal. We did it up in Sydney. And it ended up becoming a big advertising campaign in cinemas. So I'd go to watch a movie and I'd see this ad come up and I was there playing.
That's a very unique experience when you think about modern football, isn't it? Let's go right back though to your early years. So when do you realise you're pretty good at football? You're coming through the Glenorchy ranks as an underage player, and when do you sort of land on the Tassie radar for Teal Cup and that sort of stuff?
Probably in year 7. In the high school league, I came second in, I guess, the equivalent of the William Leach. So Sandy Menadue, who I ended up playing Teal Cup with, he won the league best and fairest. He played for Taroona. Yeah, I was playing for Dominic College, and I guess to come second, win the second best and fairest in the high school league was a pretty big deal. And I won the best and fairest that year, so it was just kind of...
When you were young, were you a big lad? Were you playing ruck, key forward, or...?
I was playing ruck, but I didn't really grow. My growth spurt was between year 9 and year 10. So...
Yeah, who do you remember playing with in that Tassie Teal Cup side? Anyone else who went on and played at the top level?
Guys like Matty Armstrong, Darren Pritchard, the guys that ended up playing in Tassie teams with. I do remember we played in Darwin, and I do remember Tony Lockett flew in after playing a senior game of footy with St Kilda. I think he was 15, 16,
and played for Victoria.
Yeah, I'll always remember that. So he played in the Teal Cup under 17s, and he'd played that Saturday for the Sainers. So
was he dominant?
Yes.
What do you remember?
Yeah. When was he not? Like, seriously, where was he not? I don't think enough is made about that guy.
Extraordinary.
I had the unlucky privilege of playing when I played for Fitzroy in the game. He kicked 16 straight. So that day for me didn't start too well because I was actually driving to the game and my car ran out of petrol. So I remember pushing my car up a hill and then down a hill to get to a petrol station, and my calves were cramping.
It's an interesting warm-up.
So, as a ruckman going down to help the guys in the back line with a ramp at Tony Lockett, I wasn't jumping as high as maybe I could have that day. But yeah, I have vivid memories of playing against that guy, and just he was next level, like.
And frightening, was he?
Absolutely, yeah. There's certain people you just were smart enough to stay out of their way.
So when you get back from the Teal Cup, what happens? Because you go from being your family history through the black and white at Glenorchy, and then you talked about your love of Collingwood. It's so strong, but you end up playing senior footy for North Hobart.
Yeah, an amazing guy, the lifeblood of footy clubs, these guys. Chris Hawkins, I was in their zone, but I could have played for Glenorchy, obviously through father and son, but I was in North Hobart zone, and Chris came over with a pair of North Hobart shorts and I was sold.
That's all it took.
That was it.
What did your dad think when you told him you were going to play for North Hobart?
I think he got it. There was a few other factors as well.
Yep.
I think there were the coach down at Glenorchy at the time, Gary Davison, wasn't a big fan of mine. I remember playing in the under-19s for North Hobart when I was 15 or 16, and he was very vocal in a negative way in my direction, and he sent out one of their tough guys to sort me out. I'll always remember that. So he's one of the older guys in the under-19s. I think I was 15, and this guy, Gary, I could see him going, you make sure you sort him out. And
wow. So how old were you when you played senior footy at North Hobart?
Yeah, I think I was 16.
Yep.
So I only played 4 games.
Right, yeah. Okay.
So there's a famous story about my first game. And I think it's how I got signed up to Collingwood. So I've played the first game of the year in the reserves. So Daryl Sutton was a pretty harsh taskmaster, to say the least. But I took 37 marks.
37?
And it made Scotty Palmer's punchlines in the Herald Sun. Like, some guy in Tassie took 37 marks in a game. And from what I can gather, it's still the most documented amount of marks taken in a game of footy. So
then some scouts came down and had a look at you, did they? What happened from there? How did
well,
you...
Ronnie Richards, Lou Richards' brother, and John Burt, who was head of the football department at that time. John Burt won 4 B&Fs for Essendon. They turned up to my front doorstep on the Monday after that Saturday.
After the 37 marks?
Yeah. And I signed on the dotted line. So it was that quick. Then I played in the seniors, kicked 4 goals in my first game for North, played a couple more games, and I was gone.
Wow. So they went purely on hearing in Scotty Palmer's punchlines that you'd taken 37 marks, had never seen you play. I don't imagine there was any footage that they could look at back in the day.
There was footage. So what Channel 6 used to televise the reserves game, and there's actual footage of it.
What a story.
It's pretty crazy because 37 marks is a lot of marks to take.
But then your life changes so quickly. I mean, so do you immediately go, you play those few games in the seniors and then you're off to Melbourne, are you?
Yeah, and they're really unhappy about it. Like, I remember watching the Sunday sports panel, Channel 6 sports panel, and Daryl Sutt was just going, they take all our young kids and he's too young to go and all that, And a week later I was playing at Waverley in the Resis for Collingwood.
So how, what's that challenge like when you completely uproot your life and come to the big smoke?
For a guy that probably had a lot of insecurities, I absolutely thought that I was up to the challenge. I thought I was good enough. I was speaking to Mark Williams recently, and he was reminding me how I turned up to Collingwood and was telling everyone, how good I was, and I'm going to take your place. And
was that genuinely how you felt? Was there a bit of a front that you were putting on, or?
No, it wasn't a front. Like, I just had certain, one thing, probably my biggest strength as a footballer was my leap, my jump. Like, I just had this, I guess for want of a better word, but describing myself, but it was extraordinary, really. Even in the VFL playing against guys like Justin Madden and so forth, I could easily match them because I could just jump that high. So, and I had a pair of hands that, I'd back against anyone.
Yeah.
Like I took 12, 13 marks in a quarter at Moorabbin one day.
I've seen the footage of that.
So I had pretty major self-belief. And Collingwood put me in a house with Mark Williams.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. So that Mark Choco Williams, Port Adelaide's premiership coach, is the first person who takes you in when you arrive in Melbourne.
Yep.
What was it like?
Oh, well, the first morning, because John Annear was there as well. And look, Choco was 20 years ahead of his time. So, they had the massive gym set up at home, and it was 5 a.m. weight sessions for 2 hours, and really hard runs. Like, we lived in Ivanhoe, and we'd go on half an hour runs, and for a big bloke, I think Mark twigged pretty early that I could keep up with him, and he really rated himself as a runner. And he's like, hang on, this kid's kind of... So I know he was saying to Bobby Rose, like, who was the coach, this kid can, he's... I guess it was my attitude. So, Mark was take no prisoners, and so was I, even at that age. And whether it was at training at Collingwood or, training at Collingwood in the end, when we had match practice, Lee would say, James, you go over there and have kick to kick, because I was so hard. I wasn't, I was just hard at the ball. So I used to take a lot of players out. I always remember the day I took Dakes out, Peter Dacos. So we match practice, and Dakes is on the ground, and I'm on the ground as well. And all these trainers and doctors came running out, and they all went to Dakes. I'm just on the ground having a look at Peter Dacos, surrounded by 12 medicos, and I was probably in more pain than he was. So, I think I'm just really hard at the footy.
Yeah. No, you're a very aggressive player, weren't you? Your hands were beautiful, and yeah. But where did see, I speak to you now, and you're just lovely and gentle, but on the field, you were renowned as being a pretty angry sort of a fella at times, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. That's probably something I really regret. So, in a way, because that anger, probably, like, here's a story. This is just unbelievable when you think about it. Under 19s, I was suspended for 4 weeks for throwing a football at an umpire. So I was struggling a bit in the reserves with Collingwood, so I went back to the under 19s. My last game in '84 was four games before the end of the season. So I was suspended for 4 weeks, hit an umpire fair in the face with a footy. I was selected in the seniors for the first game in '85, and somehow Collingwood played in the finals in the seniors, and somehow they counted all the Collingwood senior finals games for the
as weeks you served in the under 19s.
It just was totally bogus. Shouldn't have happened. So, yeah, I played my first game under lights. It was actually the first ever game under lights at the MCG against North.
Yep.
That's a funny story for you, because I remember before the game, David Cloak and Jeff Rains coming up to me, and so I've been named at centre-half forward, Ross Glendenning centre-half back. Clokey and Jeff Rains have come up and gone, Glendenning's back stuffed, so make sure you let him know about it. Let him know that his back's stuffed, and you're gonna. So I've gone out there, and before the first centre bounce, this is my first senior game of football, and I'm into this Brownlow medalist, the champion, going, I'm gonna wreck your back, and I know your back's stuffed, and I'm dancing around him, and I reckon he took 12 hangers on my head in the first quarter. Like, he obliterated me. So So, and he never said anything. He just smiled when I was gobbing off to him.
So that is a fair baptism of fire, playing against Ross Glendinning in your first game, in the first game under lights. And that is now such a feature of the modern game. Take me to 1990 then. So you've established yourself at Collingwood. It's a huge year, obviously, when Collingwood goes on and wins a premiership. But in that year, you get the chance to play for Tasmania in a very famous win at North Hobart Oval over Victoria. What are your memories of that day, the build-up, the sense of camaraderie that existed in that team?
Well, I want to say firstly, at no stage before that game, in the media, anywhere, did I see the letter B appear after Victoria. It only appeared after we beat them. So, as far as I was concerned, we were playing a Victorian A team. I know when you look at it now, maybe there would have been a few people missing, but
still a very good team.
Look, I remember it pretty well. I'd played under Shorey at the 88 Bicentennial Carnival. We'd had a few run-ins. I know Alistair Lynch has spoken about the time I had a massive blow-up at Shorey at half-time against playing Queensland, I think, at Norwood's home ground.
Take us through it.
But, we just, he had a go at me and I thought it was unwarranted at the time. But yeah, the way Shorey prepared for games like that was just incredible. So when I played footy, it didn't matter who I was playing against. To me, I was going to war. Like, it wasn't a game, it was a lot more than that. So I just used to prepare myself as if, this is warfare.
Watching the footage of that before the first bounce, I mean, you're roaring, you're almost pouring the ground like a raging bull.
Yeah. So I used to get myself worked up. But also, look, make no mistake, I had a very smart ruck coach in Crackers Keenan, and he taught me the art of bluff. So
he was very good at that too, wasn't he?
You could really put the fear of God into people.
Michael Roach tells a great story about the way he was treated by Crackers Keenan, even a few weeks out from a game that they were meant to play, about how long he had to live and the countdown getting closer and closer, and then went from 2 weeks to live to saw him down the street 1 week to live, then saw him before the game 2 hours to live, and then the ball's about to be bounced and it's 10 seconds to live, and then he's counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It's one of Roachy's great stories.
Yeah. Well, I remember the grand final, rocking up to the MCG and parking my car, and Peter Somerville parked a few cars, and I was into him then.
This is before the 1990 grand final.
Yeah. So I'm just like, you're dead, mate. Like you are dead. And then, I'm all worked up, telling Peter Somerville what I'm going to do to him. The eyes are spinning, and all of a sudden Paul Keating comes up and shakes my hand.
Prime Minister.
Best of luck, James. And I'm like, that's what it's like, walking into the G. Just an amazing thing to think the Prime Minister, he had his minders with him, obviously, telling him who I was. And
Brendan Gale talks about your antics in the change rooms before the 1990 state game, and Colin Alexander maybe flying into a few lockers and you were firing boys up.
Look, a lot of that came from Choco, Mark Williams. So in my first couple of years with Collingwood, I'd never know where it was coming from, but Mark would belt me, give me a whack in the face before the game. So it kind of, and I guess he felt he could do that because he was my roommate. We're still really close now. What I love about Choco is, everyone sees a certain side to him, but whenever we speak, the last thing he'll say is, "I love you." That's how our relationship is. So I guess you could say, just living together and what we went through together, I guess we could be, we're like brothers in a way. But he would give me a whack before a game, and it really worked.
Jolt you into action.
I saw Colin. Colin was just a real low key, and just thought, it's just not. Just doesn't look so. It was a deliberate thing, just to kind of wake him up. Now again, he was my teammate at Collingwood, so I felt that I could do that.
It worked.
He kicked 4 goals, yeah. So just I've done it a few other times. Unfortunately, I did it to Michael Christian once in the race at Waverley and came off second best.
What, he responded, did he?
Oh yeah. Oh no, we had a full on. It's pretty famous. We had a full on blue in the race. It was 91. We'd lost 7 in a row, and but Chriso got best on ground, and I got second best player, and we beat Essendon on the day. So
perfect.
So
there was the proof's in the pudding, isn't it, with that sort of stuff, I suppose. Were you particularly fired up that day at 1990, knowing you were pulling on the map, playing against a good Victorian side? The ground is jam-packed full of people.
Look, so some of my greatest memories were watching Tasmania as a kid, playing against either the Vics or there was a famous win over South Australia. I remember like guys at Noel Leary tearing it up, off the halfback. Those big torps that he used to kick from the kick outs, like just. I remember, was it 77, 78? It might have been. I don't know.
78 beat Western Australia, I reckon.
Victoria came down and played Tassie, and Peter Moore was my hero. Like, you couldn't get anyone any different in the style they play. But he's the reason I wore number 30 at Collingwood. And I always remember walking up and getting his autograph as he was sitting in the stands before that game. Like, to me, they were as big events as I can remember as a kid. Those state games were just phenomenal.
So you knew about the privilege and I guess the responsibility and those that came before when you pulled the jumper on that day?
Absolutely. And a lot of that came from the history of Dad, and Dad was big on the scrapbooks, and I used to pore all over those. I just used to read them religiously. And I was a great student. Any literature I could read on football, I would. And there was some great like old newspaper articles, and so I was really big on the history of the game. Especially in Tassie. So as a kid growing up, I just devoured anything to do with footy. I certainly knew the significance. Plus I was playing against Damien Monkhurst, who was in the ruck.
Collingwood teammates.
That day, he had a great game too, Monkey. He did play well, just not as well as me.
And a few others.
I always like to remind him that 1990, I took the first centre bounce in the grand final. So, here's my second ruckman, basically.
Well, then take me into, when you reflect on it, what's the most significant or powerful memory from that day against Victoria at North Hobart Oval for you? What's the thing that springs to mind that's so special for you about that day?
Happiness. Seeing the happiness of the people. And North Hobart Oval had a really special place in my heart. It was like almost like a church. Like, as a little kid, like going to that ground was something special. I was so privileged to see Peter Hudson. So I used to love watching Hutto play. And, this is in between VFL just imagine how many goals he would have kicked if he, had have had played consistently.
Yeah.
So
He only played 129 games or something like that. Didn't he? What about at the end of the game? Because your dad did the post-game interviews, didn't he?
Yeah, and I really kind of fobbed him off, like he was trying and I was just leave me alone. Like, you just don't want your dad holding the microphone in front of your face. I kind of like pushed him away a little bit, I guess. But amazing memories.
Yeah. And it's a huge year for you, obviously. Doug Barwick actually says that winning against Victoria that day was more special than winning the premiership. What was winning the premiership like for you at Collingwood?
Oh, it was probably a little bit surreal. Like when I say I was fanatical Collingwood, like I can't stress how fanatical I was. Like things like 77, 1980, like that loss, and like they really affected me. So I really knew how important it was. We could not lose that game. Like we just couldn't, for the Collingwood faithful. And there's no doubt, like guys like Tony Shaw and Dennis Banks and Darren Mullane, leading up to that grand final, we had a fair couple of weeks off and so forth, and I think they convinced us as a collective that it was going to be a reality. But when the siren rang, it was almost a feeling of emptiness. It's
How come?
Really difficult to. I don't know. It was just like you'd given so much. Like the entire. I just remember that year being so emotionally difficult. For me, like I was under a bit of pressure to retain my spot. Lee played me at full forward for quite a few games.
You kicked 33 goals that year, didn't you?
Yeah, I like to say, I think it was 33-12, which isn't a bad conversion rate.
My word.
And the great thing about the stats, they didn't count the 55 that went out of the full. So, no, well, that's not true. But no, that's a fair return from a guy, I guess, playing in the forward pocket and playing a bit in the ruck and so forth. But it was a really full-on year.
Yeah.
I think we all just gave everything that we had.
So you're almost just totally drained by the end of it all.
Yeah.
So you achieve the heights of football, winning a premiership with the team that you loved growing up and were fanatical about. A few years later, you're on the move to Fitzroy. How did that come about, and how did you feel at the time?
Well, I had my best year of footy in 91, like easily my best year. And 92, I found myself in and out of the team, and by the end of the year was more out. I had a lot of injuries. I had 8 hernia repairs in my career, which interrupted a lot of seasons. But I remember they played against St Kilda in a final and got knocked out, and I think finished second, and I wasn't picked. I was contracted for the next year. They had a meeting to go into 93, and I didn't go to the meeting. I remember Lee and Gubby Allen calling me up and said, "Where were you?" I said, "I'm not going to play for you." "But you're a contracted player, mate." I go, nah, you left me out. I don't want to play for you anymore. So yeah, and I think my dad bumped into Robert Shaw and said, "James is looking for another team." But I was a contracted player. But I just made my mind up, that's it, you left me out. No coming back from that.
Wow. And did they release you willingly in the end to Fitzroy?
It took a while. So I had a few conversations with Lee, and he goes, "No, you're part of our team and part of my plan." And Gubby Allen said, "There's no way you're going," and all the rest of it. And there was a few things. I don't think I was being compensated well enough for what I thought I'd given to the footy club. So I knew a lot of guys were probably on 10 times as much as I was. But it was that game, that St Kilda game, where they were really beaten quite badly, and I was left out. It's just I've always kind of been the master of my own destiny, and I decided. Called up Robert Shaw, said, "I want to play for you." And I guess that was a result of the 1990. I just loved him.
Yep.
I said, "I want to play for you." So for me, it was almost as much playing for the coach. And that's what happened. Somehow they did a deal. I think Collingwood got Fitzroy's first draft pick. Was Brett Chalmers.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a good deal for Collingwood.
Yep. What was Fitzroy like? Because they're not too far out from being out of the competition.
Oh, for me it was incredible. I probably had no idea how bad things were. Like, you're turning up to training and the gates are padlocked at South Melbourne. The training...
Haven't paid the rent.
Yeah, or the council rates. But you got a guy, Brucey was the captain at the time, and he'd take control and go, "Boys, the gates are locked, so we'll go over the road and train over there. Come on, let's go." Like, Brucey is, "Come on, it's fine, fellas." And but yeah, geez, we were a good team in '93. Oh, we were a good team. Like, we should have played a whole lot, made it a lot further than we did. But I think, guys like Lynchy and Brucey, and they were already somewhere else. I don't think they realised, good team.
There was a lot of talk about Tasmania coming into the AFL around the time you played for Tassie in State of Origin football in 1990 and 1993 again. How did you feel when the AFL finally opened the door and allocated the licence to Tasmania?
Oh yeah, it was just a great day. But I've always been of the view, I don't think football necessarily should be a business. It's kind of like governments now. Like, you look at Trump in the States, he's treating government as a business when it's not about. It's about looking after people. And I think football, it's a really important part of people's lives. Some people, it's all they've got. When you do a night shift at a factory, but your team wins on the weekend, that's what some people live for. And when I see, like, we're getting billions in TV rights, and it just never added up to me that Tassie should have been a part. So I think it's incredibly important to the people living in Tassie, and you just have to look at the membership numbers. So, like, the biggest membership of any team in the AFL.
Haven't even kicked a ball.
So what does that tell you?
James Manson summing it up perfectly. Musician, footballer, passionate Tasmanian. It was great to spend some time with James, a warm and gentle giant off the field, but he left no prisoners on it. Thanks for listening to James's story. For more episodes of The Heart of It, download or subscribe to the podcast, and I'll catch you next time.